Have you ever been laughed at just because you dared to dream too big? At Greenridge Academy, a place where little suits go to school in chauffeur-driven cars, where talent usually comes with a tuition fee of tens of thousands of dollars a year, a black boy stood in front of the talent show sign-up sheet and said, "I want to play the violin." The entire administrative office fell silent. Then Principal Hale chuckled. "The violin? Are you sure, Bennett?" Her gaze said everything. A joke from the Bronx, who truly believed he could play the instrument of the elite? His name was Isaiah Bennett, 13 years old, quiet, reserved, with eyes that often drifted into the distance, as if listening to something no one else could hear. He lived with his mother in a fifth-floor apartment with no elevator, in a place where if the stairwell light broke, it took 3 calls to the security guard to fix it. But every night, Isaiah would open an old wooden box beneath his bed. Inside was a dark, scratched violin that looked like it had survived a forgotten war. It wasn't just any violin. It was the last remnant of his grandfather, Jeremiah Bennett, a violin prodigy denied the stage at Carnegie Hall in 1963 simply because of his skin color. Isaiah had never heard him play in person. His grandfather passed away before Isaiah was old enough to know the difference between a C and a D note. But he listened to every old tape, studied every sheet of yellowed music. He memorized them all. His mother once said, "They may have cut your grandfather's mic on stage, but they could never mute the music in this family's blood." At school, Isaiah had no close friends. No one understood why a black kid kept drawing violins on his math notebook. He didn't go to weekend parties. He didn't play football. He simply existed quietly in a world not built for him, until the school's PA system rang out. Greenridge Academy's talent show is now open for registration. Singing, dancing, instruments, acting, everyone is welcome. The class buzzed with excitement, but Isaiah stood still, heart pounding, not from fear, but because he knew this was a calling. That afternoon, Isaiah walked home, climbed the 5 flights of worn brick stairs, and opened the door to their familiar, damp apartment. As his mother, a night shift nurse, was preparing dinner, he said, "Mom, I want to join the talent show." "Is there a category for sighing?" she joked. "I want to play the violin." His mother turned, silent for a few seconds. Then she quietly went into the bedroom and pulled a wooden box from the bottom of the closet. "If you're ready for both applause and ridicule, then take it. Your grandfather wouldn't want this violin to sleep any longer." The next morning, Isaiah carried the case to the administrative office. Principal Hale was sipping coffee, glancing at him like he was submitting a midterm absence request. "What do you need?" "I want to sign up for the talent show. Rap, dancing, stand-up comedy, something folksy?" "Violin." She paused, stared. A half smile crept onto her face. "All right then, Friday, 7 p.m. Be ready, Bennett." Then she bent over her papers as if the conversation had never happened. On his way back to class, Isaiah heard giggles from the end of the hallway. One student asked, "Violin? You think this is Juilliard or something?" But Isaiah didn't respond. Inside him, there was only one sound. The music his grandfather once played when the world refused to listen. He knew one thing clearly. When they make a joke out of your dreams, that's when you must turn the joke into a song they'll never forget. They thought he was just a poor black kid playing for fun, but Isaiah Bennett was preparing for a performance the entire school would never forget. Isaiah started practicing that very afternoon. His grandfather's violin was so old that the strings screeched. The pegs were loose, and a crack ran down its body like a wound that had never healed. But Isaiah didn't care. He sat in the tiny living room, surrounded by old books and the creaking ceiling fan, and began to play. At first, the sound was sharp as a blade across glass, harsh, off-key, jarring. But with every mistake, he adjusted. It was as if his grandfather stood behind him, whispering, "Controlling the violin isn't as important as moving the heart of the listener, my boy." Meanwhile, at school, rumors spread faster than any official announcement. The poor black kid dared to play violin, was how the rich students described it. Some even bet he would drop out at the last minute. One student snapped a photo of Isaiah sitting alone in the cafeteria, captioned it "Slum Maestro," and shared it in a private chat group filled with privileged classmates. 3 days before the show, Isaiah went to the office to ask if he could use the music room to practice. The office assistant called Principal Hale. After a few minutes, she came out holding a wooden case. "The school has a spare violin. It's old, but maybe suitable for you." Isaiah opened the case. A broken violin, completely split, a crack down the body, snapped strings, a crooked bridge. He looked at the violin, then at Principal Hale. She said nothing, just curled her lip as if she'd just performed an act of charity. Isaiah quietly took the broken instrument, bowed his head. "Thank you, I'll use it." Not because it could be played, but because he knew it was no different from what the world had handed his grandfather, his mother, and now him. Broken, incomplete, discarded things as if to say, "This is good enough for someone like you." That afternoon, Isaiah brought both violins home. He sat between two choices. One, his grandfather's old violin, scratched but filled with memory. The other, handed to him as a joke, shattered but a living testament to prejudice. He chose both. That night, his mother came home late. As she entered the house, she saw her son practicing under the faint yellow light. An old phone propped up in front of him played a recording of Bach's Partita No. 1. 2. Isaiah tried to mimic every note, every vibrato, every breath. "You could have picked something easier," she whispered. "Not to make it easier to play, Mom, but to make them remember." Elsewhere in the school, a few teachers sat drinking coffee, discussing the show schedule. One asked, "That boy Bennett, is he really playing the violin?" Principal Hale shrugged, sipped her coffee. "Let him play. Afterward, everyone will understand why. Some doors are better left closed." They chuckled softly, not out of amusement, but because they were certain they already knew the ending. What they didn't know was that what they assumed to be broken was actually a symphony waiting to be rewritten by the hands of a genius they had chosen to dismiss. It was raining, not heavily but persistently, as if the sky itself was nervous about what was about to happen. Inside the auditorium, laughter, whistles, and excitement filled the air. The stage lights blazed. Seats filled up quickly. Students whispered, "Heard Bennett's gonna play? With junkyard strings? Maybe he's doing a magic trick or something?" In the front row, Principal Hale sat cross-legged, holding the performance list with a thin smile. She tilted her head and asked the person next to her, "Ready to start filming?" "Yes, we're live streaming too." The PR staff nodded. Backstage, Isaiah stood behind the curtain. His hands trembled slightly. Not out of fear, but because the violin he held carried a bloodline, a memory, a legacy he was about to lay bare before an entire school's mocking gaze. Next to him was the broken violin, wrapped in old cloth. He gently touched the crack, closed his eyes and whispered, "They think you only screech. They've never heard you speak." The announcer stepped forward. "And now a solo violin performance from 8B's Isaiah Bennett." At first the applause was sparse. Then came laughter from the back rows. "Better get the first aid kit ready." Isaiah walked on stage. He wore nothing flashy. A white shirt, black trousers, worn sneakers. But his eyes were calm like a lake before a storm. He stood center stage, held up the broken violin. Under the lights, the crack was unmistakable. No one understood why he chose to perform with that violin instead of his grandfather's. But the truth was clear. He wanted to rewrite the shame they threw at him using the very object they gave to shame him. Isaiah placed the bow on the strings. The first sound rang out. Sharp, dry, heavy. The audience murmured, "Just as we thought. Time to pull the plug." But Isaiah didn't stop. He continued drawing the bow, adjusting his fingers, matching his heartbeat. And then, a wave of sound began to rise, both fractured and fluid. It was a symphony of pain and hope. The violin's voice trembled, but it had soul. The broken violin seemed to speak. It didn't scream, it told stories. It didn't boast, it pleaded. It didn't perform, it lived. The hall fell silent, as if under a spell. A sixth-grade girl quietly shed tears. A boy who had mocked Isaiah now looked down in shame. The math teacher laid his hand on his chest and murmured, "That's not Bach. That's Bennett." Principal Hale remained seated, gripping the performance list. Her face had gone pale. She no longer had control over the emotion rising in the auditorium. Isaiah drew the final note. It ended. He didn't bow, didn't smile, just exhaled deeply like someone who had survived a flood. 3 seconds of silence. Then suddenly, the entire auditorium rose to their feet. Applause erupted, like a wave crashing, like a landslide. They weren't just clapping for a performance. They clapped for a courageous soul who stood on stage with a broken instrument and turned it into a call for truth. Isaiah stepped off stage. He didn't run, nor did he bask in pride, but his eyes glistened. In the last row, his mother stood up, clutching her old silk scarf, and whispered, "My son didn't just play music. He made the world listen." The 7:10 p.m., backstage. Isaiah stepped behind the curtain. The atmosphere was still hushed. A few students whispered, their eyes no longer mocking but wide with awe and admiration. The black boy with the broken violin had done something no one expected. He made the entire school fall silent. He made prejudice step back. Sophia, an older student, approached him with a tissue in hand. "Hey, that piece, did you compose it yourself?" "No," Isaiah replied. "It was written long ago, by someone who was never allowed on the stage." "Who do you mean?" He smiled. "My grandfather." 7:25 p.m., faculty meeting room. Principal Hale slammed the door shut. Her face had gone pale, lips tight. Her assistant approached. "The video is spreading like wildfire across the school's social media. Over 8,000 shares in just 20 minutes. Shut it down, take it down." "Now," Hale ordered. "We can't. A student live-streamed it on TikTok. Now, the whole district is talking." Hale slammed her hand on the desk. "These damn kids, they don't understand what order means. A black boy in his cheap pity performance." No one responded. 7:40 p.m., music room. Music teacher Mr. Lyle quietly wiped away tears. A student entered. "Sir, did you know he was that good?" "No," he sighed. "I knew he was special, but I didn't have the courage to stand up for that in front of Principal Hale." "Well, now the whole school knows." The teacher looked up at the empty wall where the old violin used to hang as a joke. "It's time to hang it back up with the respect it deserves." 8 p.m., Isaiah's home. Dinner was cold. Isaiah and his mother sat across from each other, neither touching their food. His mother, Ruth, slowly placed an old photograph on the table. A black man in a tuxedo holding a violin standing before an orchestra. Below the faded photo were the words, "Ezra Bennett, soloist denied at Carnegie Hall, 1972. Isaiah looked at the picture. His fingers traced the edge of the paper. "I played his piece." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And you gave him back something he never had." A silence settled between them. Then Ruth looked at her son, her eyes shining. "They gave you a broken violin, but you made the entire school bow its head. Not because of technique, but because of the truth you wove into every note." The next morning, Crestwood School. No more mocking laughter, no more indifferent glances. Isaiah walked down the hallway. People stepped aside. Some nodded. Others looked away in shame. But Isaiah didn't need their apologies, because the night before, he hadn't just played music, he had forced the entire system to listen. 9 a.m., principal's office. The door opened. A man in a suit walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. He was a representative from the District Board of Education. "We received over 300 emails from parents and students overnight." "This is being blown out of proportion," Hale replied defensively. "No, Principal Hale. This is being brought into the light. And this," he said, placing a document on the desk, "is a preliminary disciplinary report in case there is evidence of racial or bias-based discrimination against a student." Hale said nothing. Her hand gripped the teacup tightly, but the cracks had already begun to spread. 10 a.m. City Archives room. Edward Hayes, a black classical music researcher, flipped through old newspapers when his phone rang. "Edward, have you seen the video? That boy, Isaiah Bennett, he played Ezra Bennett's concerto. It's unmistakable." "Ezra Bennett," Hayes' voice cracked. "You're sure?" "That's the piece he wrote after being denied a performance at Carnegie Hall." 10:15 a.m. local media office. A headline exploded on the front page of the Camden Cultural Voice. The heir of a forgotten legend revives history on a middle school stage. Below were photos. Isaiah Bennett bowing on stage. A handwritten music sheet by Ezra Bennett from the City Archive. A photo from 1972. Ezra Bennett denied because of his skin color. 1:30 p.m. City television station. At noon, the local news broadcast ran a breaking story. The story of Isaiah Bennett, the young black violinist who performed with a broken instrument at Crestwood's talent show, is shaking the entire state. Even more shocking, media sources confirm he is the grandson of renowned violinist Ezra Bennett, who was once denied a performance at Carnegie Hall for being black. The camera panned to footage of Isaiah's performance, and the city fell silent. 2 p.m. Crestwood School. Principal Hale sat in silence in her office. Outside, students gathered around a newly posted bulletin board. Special announcement from the school board. A tribute ceremony for student Isaiah Bennett will be held this Friday. Below, in smaller but more impactful text, representatives from the Manhattan School of Music, the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra, and national broadcaster PBS have confirmed attendance. 4 p.m. Isaiah's home. Reporters knocked. TV vans parked outside. Ruth, Isaiah's mother, stepped out. But instead of avoiding them, she stood tall, eyes straight into the lens. They once silenced my father, but his grandson just made the world listen. 7 p.m. Dinner that changed history. Isaiah sat beside his mother in the old wooden box that held his grandfather's handwritten scores. He opened a sheet, the paper yellowed but the notes still clear. At the top was a scribbled line. For the day when someone can play this and be heard, not seen. Isaiah whispered, "I'll play it, Grandpa." On the stage they once denied you. The next day, email from New York. From Artistic Director, Carnegie Hall. Subject, official invitation. Dear Mr. Bennett, the Juilliard School would be honored to welcome you to our special program, Rebirth of a Legacy, to be held at Carnegie Hall next month. You will be the first to perform the previously unrecognized concerto of Ezra Bennett at the very place he was once denied. Your talent is not just a breakthrough, it is history correcting itself. Carnegie Hall, New York City, 1 month later. A light spring rain fell. The late chill seeped through every coat, but outside Carnegie Hall, people lined up down the block. On the event banner, bold letters read, Rebirth, the Lost Concerto of Ezra Bennett. Soloist, Isaiah Bennett, 13 years old, Crestwood Middle School. Backstage, 6:47 p.m. Isaiah wore a white shirt, black suit, tidy but quiet. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of understanding that this was no longer just a performance. This was the apology history owed his grandfather. He opened the violin case. Not the broken violin from before, but a handcrafted $8,000 violin gifted by luthier Mr. Klein. Yet he still brought the old violin it hung nearby, a witness. His mother, Ruth, placed a hand on his shoulder. You're not just playing for your grandfather. You're playing for everyone who was ever forced into silence. Isaiah nodded. I won't let them down. Stage lights rose. Carnegie Hall fell completely silent. Nearly 3,000 audience members sat in breathless stillness. In the front rows were conductors, critics, renowned artists, and middle school students from Camden invited to attend. Behind the curtain stood Principal Hale, for once stripped of arrogance and forced to face consequence. Isaiah stepped out, small beneath the spotlight. The crowd murmured softly. But when he raised the violin to his shoulder, the room held its breath. Concerto by Ezra Bennett. Movement y allegro agitato. As the first note rang out, Isaiah wasn't playing music. He was telling a story. Each note slid across the strings like a scream stuck in the chest. He played with his whole heart, channeling his grandfather's pain, the humiliation at Crestwood, the stares he endured every school day, and the quiet embrace of a single mother. The audience began to cry. An elderly music critic whispered, "This isn't just a performance, this is a declaration." The older black man beside him clenched his fists, his eyes reddening. This is what Ezra was meant to be given. Movement 2, lento dolente. The violin wept. Isaiah guided the room through the sorrowful movement where Ezra had once written in his journal, "This is where I redraw the dream they took from me." No one breathed, no coughing, no camera clicks. Carnegie Hall, once the place that turned Ezra Bennett away, now listened to him through his grandson. Movement 3. Vivace Redento. The tempo quickened, brighter, each note cut through old prejudice like a blade through silk. Isaiah closed his eyes, imagining his grandfather beside him, guiding, leading, and then the final note rang out. Silence. Then a single clap. Then a second. Then the entire hall rose. Applause thundered off every wall. A standing ovation. Nearly 3,000 people clapping for a boy, for a buried composition, for a long overdue apology, for justice, delivered not by courts but by music, backstage after the performance. Isaiah returned behind the curtain. Principal Hale stood waiting. No flowers, no trophy, only hesitation and red eyes. I don't know what to say, Isaiah. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. He looked at her for a moment, then replied, "I didn't play for your apology. I played so my grandfather could be heard." He turned away, not with anger, not with judgment, only gently, like the music he had just performed. Resolute and freeing. The next morning, media explosion. CNN. Young black violinist stuns Carnegie Hall with band composition. NPR. The music of Ezra Bennett lives through his grandson's hands. New York Times. A night proving what history rejected, art will restore. Crestwood School. Monday. Isaiah returned like a passing storm that left new life in its wake. The school greeted him with applause. A new bulletin board had been posted. Crestwood establishes the Ezra Bennett Music Scholarship for students with financial hardship, regardless of skin color. Isaiah had done what his grandfather never could. He didn't just play music. He made a society listen with its heart. 3 weeks after the Carnegie Hall performance, when the applause had faded, another kind of echo began, a ripple of change. Isaiah returned to Camden, where every street corner held memories. The old apartment, the bus stop where his mother waited for hours after night shifts, the alley where his grandfather Ezra once played violin for neighborhood kids using a makeshift instrument made from scrap wood and fishing line. But this time, he didn't return merely as a young musician. He returned with the responsibility of someone who had awakened something larger than himself. 1 week later, with the support of a nonprofit music organization and his mother, Isaiah officially launched a program, Free Strings Camden, a free violin class for children of color and underprivileged backgrounds. The first classroom wasn't in a grand academy or lavish concert hall. It was a dusty, flickering lit, peeling-walled room in an old community center. But the first notes played there shone like sunrise. Isaiah didn't teach from rigid textbooks. He taught the kids how to feel music, how to listen inwardly, how to play with your heart before you play with your fingers. Within a month, over 50 violins were sent from across the United States. A Korean violinist sent one engraved with the message, "Let your soul play louder than their judgments." Short videos of Isaiah teaching the kids spread rapidly across TikTok, Reels, and YouTube Shorts. The hashtag #Violin for Justice appeared over 4 million times within 2 weeks. An educational publisher contacted Isaiah and his mother to include Ezra Bennett's story in the U.S. Music and Civics curriculum. The new chapter was titled, Music Against Silence, The Legacy of Ezra and Isaiah Bennett. At Crestwood, Principal Hale, after numerous complaints and parental demands, had formally removed the old biased music evaluation rubric. A new music teacher was hired, a black artist who had once studied at the same conservatory as Ezra. A handwritten copy of Ezra's Rebirth Concerto was mounted in the main hall, just beneath a large portrait of Isaiah. The caption read, "The boy who made us listen." At one free strings class, Isaiah noticed Amara, a 9-year-old girl with curly hair and pigtails, quiet but bright-eyed. Her first notes were clumsy, but something about them felt deeply familiar. He asked, "Where did you learn before?" "I didn't. I just listened to my grandpa play before he passed." Isaiah stayed silent for a moment, then placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have what every musician needs, a reason." From that day on, Amara became the first successor of the legacy, a little girl Isaiah nicknamed the small heart of the great strings. Isaiah was invited to speak at TEDx Youth. Under the familiar red lights, he stepped onto the stage, this time without a violin. I was laughed at just for daring to dream. They handed me a broken violin and thought I would break with it. But music doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. They gave me silence. I gave them a symphony. The audience rose to their feet, not just for a clever line, but because they heard themselves in it. Isaiah's story did not stop at art. It reached policy. The New Jersey Department of Education passed a resolution requiring every school to have accessible arts programs for underserved students. Several new scholarships were created named the Isaiah Bennett Music Justice Fund. His quote became the national slogan for a new campaign on artistic equity. They gave me silence. I gave them a symphony. One evening, Isaiah sat in his grandfather's old room. On the wall hung two violins, the old broken one and the new one. He picked up the broken violin and drew a note. It wasn't perfect, but it still rang. His mother, standing in the doorway, smiled softly. "You're still holding on to it?" "I want to remember, Mom, that sometimes the most broken thing makes the truest sound." One June afternoon, while Isaiah was tuning Amara's violin, his phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unfamiliar email address. Subject: Invitation to audition, Juilliard Presidential Arts Fellowship. Body: Dear Mr. Bennett, the Juilliard School would be honored to welcome you to our most competitive Presidential Arts Fellowship program. All tuition and living expenses are covered. You are one of 3 students chosen globally for this pilot. He stared at the words, unable to believe his eyes. Juilliard, the School of Prodigies, a chance to join the ranks of the world's finest artists. But it also meant leaving Camden, leaving Free Strings, leaving Amara, leaving his mother. That night in their small kitchen, Isaiah laid the letter on the table. His mother, still peeling carrots for the evening soup, glanced at it and said, "You already know what you want, don't you?" Isaiah scratched his head. "I'm not sure. Juilliard was Grandpa's dream, and ours too. But if I go, who's going to keep Free Strings alive? Who will teach the kids?" She set the knife down. "You can go, but dreams aren't meant to be carried by one person alone. Sometimes passing it on is the only way to make it last longer." 3 days later, Isaiah hosted a small gathering at the Camden Community Center. The modest hall was full students, parents, friends, teachers, even local journalists. He stepped forward, not holding a violin, but a signed document. "I'm going to Juilliard, but Free Strings will not close. I am honored to introduce the new executive director of the project, Mrs. Lorraine Bennett." The room erupted in applause. Lorraine, his mother, stepped up, so moved she had to steady herself on the table. "I won't be teaching music, but I will keep the doors open, the lights on, and a place for anyone who was ever told no, like my son was." Isaiah turned to Amara and handed her his personal violin. "You are the next generation. You can go further than I ever could." The girl hugged the violin, her eyes brimming. At the airport, as Isaiah prepared to board, his mother held him tightly. "Mom, you gave up your youth for me. Now I'm leaving. Are you sad?" She smiled. "You're not leaving. You're taking us with you, in every note." Just before the security gate, Isaiah handed her a USB drive. "This has the complete recording of Ezra's rebirth." "When should I play it?" "When Free Strings hosts its first concert." 2 years later in Camden, the inaugural concert of the Free Strings Community Orchestra took place. As the event began, Lorraine stepped onto the stage. "We didn't have instruments. We didn't have a stage. We didn't have people who believed, but we had each other, and we had a piece of music the world needed to hear." She pressed play on the USB. Isaiah's violin rang out Ezra's Rebirth Concerto. The entire hall was immersed in sound. A little girl sat in the front row, Amara head bowed, eyes closed, feeling every note like it was speaking to her soul. "They gave you a broken violin to mock you. You answered with a melody no one could ignore." Isaiah Bennett didn't become a star overnight. He became the guiding light for forgotten dreams. This story isn't just about music. It is a reminder that when others doubt you, let your talent speak. When the world is silent, create a sound it cannot ignore. If you've ever been dismissed because of your dreams, remember this: you don't need permission to shine. If this story moved you, leave a comment. I will not be silent, and share it wherever you are, so this dream can go even further.